You're listening to the Extended Gamut podcast, the podcast for printing professionals.
You promised a new intro and
Did
you delivered.
Did you know we explore trending topics in the print industry? We meet with industry experts. We take your questions. But today we're talking about Drupa.
Drupa.
One of us just visited Germany and returned from Drupa. Thought we'd give an update. So that's what we have in store for you on episode 23 of the Extended Gamut podcast.
Okay, episode 23, talking about Drupa.
Drupa.
One of us went, and it wasn't me. So today we're gonna, for all of us that weren't able to go to Drupa, we're gonna pick your brain.
All right.
So first question, where did you go?
Where did I go? So Drupa is held in the same spot every year. Düsseldorf. Some people call it Dusseldorf.
That's what I called it.
Yeah. I think you're wrong.
Okay.
But
does it have umlaut?
It does.
Okay.
It does. Like Hanamule.
Yeah. So how did you get there? You flew into...
So there was a couple different options. I went like 8 years ago and flew into Brussels and took a black van in the rain up to Düsseldorf. This time I flew to Munich, beautiful airport, and then got on a different airplane and flew from Munich to Cologne.
Okay.
Spelled like Cologne.
Cologne.
Like the... Mm-hmm. And then we would drive like 45 minutes from our hotel in Cologne up to Düsseldorf.
Okay.
Cologne and Düsseldorf, rival enemies in the beer world. So you have to be very careful. It's like Kolsch versus alt beer. And
which did you prefer?
They're both.
You're going to piss off.
They're both interesting. The Kolsch, I think I would pick Kolsch.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't, it's not like in America. We show up to a bar and they're like, hey, we have 774 beers on tap, and people are trying to make decisions. In Germany, they're like, do you want beer or wine? And you're like, beer. They're like, okay. And then your beer comes out and you're like, oh,
everyone's drinking the same beer.
It's very simple.
Okay.
It was actually a little refreshing.
Yeah.
The only downside is they bring it in little 3-ounce glasses. So then you get a tab and it's like 54 beers. And you're like, 54 beers?
It didn't feel like that.
But it equates to like 3 beers.
Huh. And so that keeps it from getting warm maybe? Because they're just topping it off?
I don't know. I mean, they have to be washing so many of these glasses.
Yeah.
So
they're walking around with a pitcher, or they...
No, one glass at a time. Sometimes they'll come out like with a tray and it's just got all these glasses on them. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
I think the other thing from the travels was it's kilometers. And when you're used to miles per hour, you always feel like, oh, this is insane. I'm going 100 kilometers an hour. But, you know, that's like, whatever, 45 to 60 miles an hour, in that range. But there are times, because you're on the Autobahn, where you're like, that number, no matter what math I do, we are going over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But they don't.
With the Autobahn, is it what you think? It's just like cars going super, super fast. Everyone.
You picture it, but it's just like a regular highway that's like 2 lanes or 3 lanes. What they do is they're like, I feel like, very attentive drivers. If you're not passing someone, you're in a lane that is not the far left lane. So then the people that want to go fast, and then you get over. In America, nobody knows what they're doing.
I was just in South Carolina. They don't care what lane.
No.
It's so frustrating. I feel like here in the Chicago area, at least it's mostly people are kind of sticking to the right if they're going to drive slow. It's not like that there.
It prevents accidents, because if you only pass on the left, then there's no one like swerving around people and whatnot. So the driving, the beer, I think the other thing was in the airport, we got to the terminal in Munich, and we like go down these stairs, and it looks like a bus terminal. And all of a sudden they like a bus shows up, and they're like, doing your boarding, you're like, wait, am I reading this right? I thought I was getting on a plane. And you board by, your priority number, and then you get on a bus. Then the bus drives you to an airstrip where there's like a bunch of airplanes, and you get out of the bus and board the plane up the stairs of the plane and in.
Like the president, you're like waving.
And then when you land, you get off, you get onto a bus or something and go back into an airport. So there's like an extra step, and it was.
I wonder if they can squeeze more flights in that way. They don't have to have a gate for every plane.
I don't know. Yeah, it's possible.
Okay, so that's the travel.
That's the travel.
So this is a printing trade show. It's every 4 years.
Yeah.
How does it compare to other, maybe like, let's say, people who have gone to Printing United, ISA?
Right. We did a podcast on FESPA, and I think we talked a little bit about the scope of the different trade shows. We talked about what the word Drupa stood for and how often they are and how many people attend. I think this is my second time going to this show, so I feel like I have a clear understanding of what the show is, who it's for, maybe who it's not for. It really, I feel like, is for people looking at digital presses. I mean, I feel like that's really the origin and the crux of the whole thing. So Heidelberg's going to have their own hall. When you go into HP, who has their own hall, there's an area that might be 30 by 50. That's some wide format stuff for people that, might be listeners of this podcast, where you have a Latex 2700 or you have like the Latex 800. And then the rest of this entire hall is these huge indigo presses.
Yeah.
And it makes the stuff that you're like, oh yeah, you tell people, I don't sell those little baby printers you see at Staples. I sell real professional printers. These things cost, $18,000. And then you're like, you show up to this show and you're like, oh, who am I?
There's like another level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I did find fascinating is I probably had a couple different days when I was walking the show, and you show up and there's got to be, I don't know, $3 million, $5 million press, and they're doing this big presentation, and there's like 70 people like watching the presentation, like I'm about to buy this $5 million press. But then when you read about how many people are actually buying this press, but it was like amazing how many people were just like in it and listening, and you were like,
so is it all big manufacturers that exhibit, or would like an IT supplies from Europe exhibit at all, or it's just not like
I didn't see anyone that was not an OEM exhibiting. So it felt like it was all the brands. Some halls will be like Kongsberg and Heidelberg, like huge companies, and 3 of them will take over one full hall. And there's like 17 halls. A couple aren't like actual halls, but you'll find like hall 4 might have 2 big booths and then like 75 small booths. But then you get like back into the back where like halls 8 and 9 were, and hall 9 has Canon in it, but it also maybe has one other big brand in it. But it was really interesting.
Yeah. So you were there. You were there with HP.
Yep.
And then you were also obviously checked out EPSON's booth and what they had.
And Canon. Yeah.
And Canon.
Those are like the 3 big brands that most related to us. Outside of like Suma would have a booth, or some of the cutting brands would have booths that we sell. But from a printing perspective, those are the 3 brands. And
so from here, we're watching LinkedIn and watching whatever everyone's talking about at Drupa. Epson had a cool 3D, whatever, what's that called? Virtual walkthrough where you could, walk through their booth and check out everything. Okay, so I have what I saw from the outside of what was new technology. What were like some of the things that you walked away like, oh, this is something new? Maybe it doesn't even have to be those 3 OEMs, but you're like, oh, this is cool. This is new. Yeah. I think if you start with HP on the stuff that pertains to people that would listen to our show, the Latex 2700, which is their 126-inch wide latex roll-to-roll, dual roll, single roll printer, that would be
I guess, sit on top of where the 1500.
A replacement to the 1500 eventually.
Yeah. So it has certain ink capacity today, and they announced at the show that there's an accessory you can buy, and you can use it on a brand new 2700 you buy. You can also retrofit your existing 2700 with this 10-liter ink accessory. So it will enable your 2700 to have 10-liter ink capacity, whereas today I think the max is 5.
Right. And that 10-liter capacity was reserved for
like the 30
older generation 3600. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, that's cool. So you would lower your ink cost.
Yeah, and I did a little research and asked some people from HP, and yes, you are going to lower your ink cost, but they said the primary reason someone would do it is actually to change your ink less often and be able to do longer runs, unattended printing. They find that's really the reason people want to. I mean, that's what they said. Obviously, you want some ink savings, and there are ink savings, but they felt like the primary reason people would do that would be for more unattended printing capability. So that was like a thing that they had there. They made some advancements with some of their software, so they'll be coming out with just different things for PrintOS, and HP is definitely thinking about AI and what the impact of AI is, and how could that actually play in a tangible way in the printing world. So, we had a couple meetings and they were just talking through, scenarios of what it could look like. Not that they have it, but they're definitely thinking about that. And so that's always fun to spend some time there. Then they also announced a partnership with Canva.
That's what I was just pulling up. I was curious if they talked about that there. Or...
They did talk about it. I think if you go online right now, as of this podcast, there isn't like a ton of concrete information about what exactly it means and how you would do it. But it's really about people using Canva and how many people use Canva. And then how do you connect people that then say, all right, I have this design and I want to print it. And how do you connect people via technology and HP to get that printed wherever? And so how that is, and who are those providers, and what does it take to be a provider, and what does that all look like, I think that's what they're ironing out. But they did sign a partnership, and they were really excited about it. So
cool. So that's the HP side, I think.
That was the HP side of things. Then when I went over towards Canon, I mean, their booth was top notch. It was just a very modern, clean. They did a great job putting the booth together. But I didn't see any new technology that was like, I hadn't ever seen this before, because we just came from ISA. So the Colorado, it's still the M3, the M5. You have the Pro 2600, Pro 4600, Pro 6600. You have the GP series. And they displayed it in a great way, and it's new technology. I mean, some of this stuff just came out because we were, talking about, I think in February, the 2600, 4600.
So they had all that on display.
So it was on display, but it wasn't like at Drupa we announced a thing as it pertains to the market we're selling into. So I'm sure they announced things that were outside of that. They had a cool video studio where they were showing a video, and they put a lot of cool stuff together there at Canon. And then I went by the EPSON booth, and they did a great job as well.
When you say booth, it's like massive. It was like, at least because that's the one I got to see, the virtual. It looked like a whole. It almost looked like a hall from Printing United.
Yeah, I probably will get this wrong, but I mean, I would venture to say it was like 200 feet by 500 feet, the booth. If you think of a normal large EPSON booth being 40 by 40 or 80 by 100, this is like 200 by 500. Yeah. Because you have to think they're showing robotics, they're showing all their direct to fabric. So that is, like their Mona Lisa and all of that. They have all their projectors. And then everything you'd see at like a Printing United or ISA. And then they had a couple printers there, and they were titled Concept Printer. Yeah. So you can tell what it is, because one was a 64-inch Dsub printer, So in the Dsub world right now, they have the F170 to the F570, and then they have this new F6470. That's like their newest thing. And then as you move up the line into 64-inch, you have an F7200 and you have an F94.
And I think the F7200 has got to be, I'm just going to look, but
6 or 7 years old?
I think it's even older.
Even older. So this is called a concept printer. So you don't know where it's going to play, but it was a cool printer. It was printing. The form factor is much more sleek. If you've seen what the new Aqueous P20570 looks like, it's got more of that, which really mirrors like the P6570, P8570, that sleek form factor, smaller, compact, with like almost a table on the top.
It looked like waist height instead of chest height almost. Yeah.
Lower. Yeah, they had like a little accessory where you could put a roll on, and like it would help you get the roll on because you got to get down so low.
So they had two printers. It looked like that looked very similar next to each other from the virtual walkthrough.
Yeah, one was so this was concept Dsub printer. So I would say that's going to sit there in the 7200, 9400 replacement, whether it's one unit to replace both or this, or there's going to have multiple. There wasn't a ton of information about it. If you went to Printing United in the fall, you saw that they put out like this new DTG printer and this new UV desktop printer, and they were saying like, it's not out yet, but we have something, and they didn't have a name for it. So it was sort of like that, almost even more vague in terms of just calling it a concept printer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have this show every 4 years and it's the big show, and you have something that's a couple months away from being announced, you would want to get it out. Yeah,
you're also in Europe, so you have to think like terminology. Like for us, concept, we would go to the Detroit or Chicago Auto Show, and they'd say, "Here's the concept," and you're like, "Oh, well, that doesn't mean it's actually coming to market. It's just like sometimes some wild design car. Where this is coming to market. This is not a concept." But in Europe, that they might use a different word.
Yeah.
So that was the Dsub, and then next to it was the concept, which was a eco-solvent printer. So they still were showing their resin printer and their S80 printer at the show, but this was a concept. The big change was there was no metallic ink in the printer, but there was green ink. So they had images that were green. So added a green, had white, much smaller form factor. I would almost venture to say you would wheel this out of the box and be ready to use it.
Oh, is that what it looked like? Not
when
a
you
stand.
have like the P65 and P85 right now.
Yeah.
You don't assemble it.
No.
Because the 9570, you're still building that old, the stand.
Yep.
That's the T. This didn't have that. So
yeah, we'll have to see. So counterpoint, I guess, would be the P20570, which looks similar. There's still a stand.
Is there?
From what I understand. So it'll be, because it definitely looks like it's like a unibody type.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, so I don't know. But
I know which one our techs are rooting for.
And it was bags of ink.
Yep.
I couldn't tell the size, but I mean, in that area, you're in that 1.5 liter to 1.6 liter. I mean, that's just the space and the bags that they are today. So I don't know what exactly it's going to be. But I mean, Epson's committed to going, cartridge free.
Yep.
So every new model goes into that bag.
Yeah, so that one's exciting.
And the print head, it looked like a new print head.
We'll find that out too, right?
But I mean, it's hard. You see it printing.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I mean, new technology is exciting. I mean, when did the S80 come out?
So the F7200, I looked that up. That's 2015. So that's 9 years.
9 years.
And the S80 was right around that same time. It was like 2015, 2016.
It is interesting because as much as we want new technology because it just drives innovation and it's cool, there is like the flip side of that where reliability, trusted. I mean, even on the HP side, you have the 365 and that's getting, what would they say, pretty old in the tooth or something.
Long in the
tooth, whatever those phrases are. But there's something exciting about new technology. And so I saw that. So those would be the two things I saw. On the label side, there was a new label printer. Yeah, the C8000U. Completely different form factor, which is exciting.
Looks like a high speed to replace the C7500.
Yeah.
Like 12 inches a second,
Yeah.
high speed. Yeah. We'll see.
One thing I like about Drupa and some of these bigger shows is the manufacturers show you like their breadth of, where they play. And EPSON is big into robotics. So they had like robot arms doing stuff. And but they were also showing, their t-shirt printer lineup from their F1070, F2270, F3070. They were showing the new desktop UV printer that's scheduled to come out sometime later this summer into the fall.
Yeah, we're like months away from several new printers. With the F1070, that should begin shipping any day now. The P2570, that one should start shipping in a month.
Yep, that one was there at the show. They had the F10070 was at the show, but they did just announce an F11070, which is the 76-inch version that really would sit on top of what today is the F9470, and that's giving you, production level dice sublimation.
2,600 square feet an hour.
Yeah.
High speed industrial. Yeah. We're excited about that printer too.
Yeah. And then I would say, out of our sphere is the Mona Lisa. So they introduced, I think it was the the Mona Lisa, maybe 1300. I might be saying that wrong.
Direct to fabric.
Direct to fabric, which is was a cool thing. Yeah. ML 13,000. That's what it was. Yeah.
And you were there for like 12 hours, I think, total, right? It sounds like you saw a lot in a very short amount of time, because it was, what was it, like 2 days, 3 days?
Yeah, it wasn't, we flew in, it changes days sometimes because of the flights, but we got in on a Wednesday night, did the show on Thursday and Friday, and flew home on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So it was pretty efficient. Yeah.
Did you eat any sausages while you were there?
No blood sausage for me. I had tried some the last time I was there. But I did try anything someone put in front of me and said, you should try it. I tried it. No one recommended any bratwurst or anything. They had some food carts, and it was like optional. You could go there, and some of it just didn't look that great.
You opted out.
But we did the Wiener Schnitzel, which was great. The white asparagus. I did have German sushi, which is basically just sushi, and you eat it in Germany. So it's
it sounds delicious.
It's so close to the ocean. And no, we tried it. We ate at a couple really cool places. Stayed at a cool hotel that was an old water tower. So it was like a round building.
Oh.
So your rooms were it was just funky and something different. The Rhine River is flowing through everything. So you're driving, and there's tunnels that go underneath, and you're always looking at boats that are going down, cargo ships. And so it's a little bit of a different landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall it was a good trip. I think walking it the first time, I felt like I needed at least 3 full days. And then I feel like, but if you've been there before and you know what to look for and what maybe doesn't pertain, you're able to walk the show a lot faster. We were supposed to rain every day, but we actually had great weather, and overall great trip. So that would be my synopsis of Drupa.
I appreciate it. Thanks for giving us the scoop, so we don't have to make the travel. And
yeah,
sounds like it was a good trip.
Yeah. So if you have other questions, comment, chat, send us a note. We'd love to answer them, but we tried to cover some of the things we thought would be pertaining to the listeners of this show. Just give a quick update on Drupa 2024. And I guess that's it for this episode of the Extended Gamut. So hopefully you learned a few things about traveling and which airports to go into and what was shown there. And you can find this on all the usual platforms. Let us know if there's topics you want to discuss in the future, or if there's guests you want us to have on. We will reach out to them and sell them on why they should be on this show. So that's it. Have a good one.
Thanks for watching.